Matthew, when it comes to sustainability in 2026, you say, quote, the packaging industry is moving from aspiration to accountability, unquote. I agree. How do you think this is going to change the makeup and the tasks of a brand owner's packaging department, and why?
I think it's going to be a pretty rude awakening for a lot of them, because the challenges which were a bit of a case of kicking the can down the road have run out of road now. So the companies which have put off sustainability or kind of seen it as something that's sort of a little bit difficult or complex or not really worth their while at the moment are going to, they're coming into that kind of end zone where it's going to start being something that's going to cost them enormous fines, access to markets, I mean, all sorts of pretty critical business issues. So the accountability part of it is that for many years, there's been a sort of bit of smoke and mirrors about sustainability. And part of that has been what we tell consumers. Part of that has been, you know, how we kind of create our packaging. Part of it has been not really wanting to have a look at some of the kind of flaws or design issues. But now that there is laws coming in that are saying like you must, you shall not, you know, so there's no place to hide from that. The wording and the reach of the regulation is pretty expansive and also pretty deep. So the companies that are going to succeed this year, I was somewhat flippantly saying align or decline was the kind of the sort of the phrase that I was using, but it's all going to be about alignment, because that accountability requires everything to be set up so that you know your materials, you know where they come from, where they're going to, you know the strengths and weaknesses of your materials. So if you're in the packaging department, you're going to need to know all this information, because somebody at some point, or many people at some point, are going to come to you and say, what is your scope 3? What is your material usage? What is the you know, why are we spending all these millions of dollars on plastic when we should be moving to paper and reducing our EPR modulation fees? So a lot of these questions, and they're not going to be ones that are open-ended questions. They're going to be ones that require something to be done in a fairly immediate timeline. So I think that the accountability is, it's not just that it's going from a kind of wish list of what we would like to happen, but it's also the accountability is also now. So it's not, you know, like kind of accountability in a month's time or in a year's time. It's saying to people, I need these answers today. And if you don't know those answers, you can't keep on relying on your supply chain or other people in the business to kind of cover for you. So that's going to be more easily uncovered. And so, and the cost of not knowing is really not worth paying, because, you know, some of the fines that they've got in Europe at the moment are like 4% of revenue. And I mean, these are enormous sums. And some of the companies that have already been hit with them are, you know, big multi-billion-dollar companies that have been hit by these fines.
Yep. And in some companies, in some markets, that's more than what your profit percentage is. That's
very
scary.
Close to, yes.
That's scary.
So, you know, the immediate thing that they need to do, like the accountability, is it doesn't have to be complex. And that's part of the problem is that everybody looks at this as a kind of complicated problem to solve. And it's not that complicated. It's just that we complicate it by working in different directions, or not using shared definitions or metrics, or the communication is slightly disjointed. And all of that just means that, bit by bit, what started off as a fairly simple message gets convoluted or distorted. But I would say that the thing that I would suggest anybody working in the packaging departments of brands like right now is both understand simplistically what is the law saying, what is the regulation that's coming in, because a lot of people still don't know about Sunrise or PPWR or various things, and that they're incoming this year. It's the 12th of August. But the other part to it is the interpretation of what that rule or legislation or market dynamic means to you. So understand what that's going to look like for your business, for your department, for your team. Because the regulation, it doesn't matter what the law says. What it matters is how that's going to impact your business. So, like if you're somebody who is predominantly working in paper, then PPWR is less of an issue to you. But if you're somebody who 90% of your business is plastic bottles or crates or something like that, then you really need to be, exactly, you need to be much more clued into it, because you're going to have to make some pretty important decisions about, do I stick with my my product range, or do I change my packaging mix? Because it might be the case that it's easier and cheaper to completely change your entire packaging mix than to stick with what you've been doing for the last 5 or 10 years. And all of that, you need to understand what complying to that law looks like for your business, how it's going to affect the plants, how it's going to affect the machinery, how it's going to affect each one of the products that you make. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people struggle with, because they kind of look at the law and they're like, okay, well, it's sort of saying all these things, and maybe 90% of what PPWR or EPR says is not relevant to you. But it's that 10% that you have to be very, very aware of, because there's nowhere to hide this year. That's all, they're coming into being, and they're going to be fining you enormous sums of money if you get it wrong.
Okay, 2 follow-up questions to that, Matthew. Thank you. Who do you think is going to be making the packaging decisions at a brand owner company moving forward? And I say who, but typically it's not. I'm not looking for an individual. I guess I'm looking for a department. Who's going to be making this decision? In some fast-moving consumer product goods areas, marketing has driven a lot of the decisions. In others, it's been the production and engineering. In others, it's the C-suite, the corporate executives. I hate to say it, but I see a lot more influence. I don't know if that's even the right word, from the chief financial, from the financial department into all of this. What do you think? Who do you think? What department do you think is going to be making packaging related decisions?
I mean, ideally, it would start at the top of the CEO. That would be the ideal, or the C-suite. As a group together would be aligned on a single point to go for, because that massive issue of misalignment starts 100% there every single time. So at the moment, if you have marketing that have one set of outcomes that they want, procurement that have a separate one, engineering have a third one, and then packaging or sales are involved, you might have 5 different directions that you're heading into, and trying to kind of organize all of those into a unified direction is sometimes impossible. One of the biggest challenges that I was writing about last year was that for companies that are consumer goods brands, that they are making a product that they are then selling to consumers, probably 60-70% of those businesses are not responsible for that actual act of making the product, and yet they determine the direction, the marketing, the markets that they're in, what they're doing, and they make the mistake of trying to give the consumers what they want. And then they're kind of cashing checks that then engineering are having to say, we can't do that. We don't have the resources to make that product. I can't make it, drop it on the floor and it disappears biodegradable. I can't, do all these things that you want me to do. And so that huge disconnect internally in a majority of these fairly large corporates causes a huge issue. And so if you can have one person at the very top of the company, ideally the CEO, saying, okay, this is our North Star, everybody's aligned to it, everybody's heading in that direction, then at least you have a much better chance of that being a more likely end destination. At the moment, it's sort of, there's too many people going in too many different directions. I'd say it's probably mainly at the moment a toss-up between procurement and marketing. But if the CEO can basically take charge and say, we make whatever product it is that they make, we just want to make a more efficient product and have a lower footprint. That's a very basic sustainability strategy. But if they could even start with that, I think a lot of companies would see a lot more success than they're seeing at the moment.
Okay. It sounds easy on paper. Not quite sure how easy it will be to implement. And I think that's where a lot of the innovation, I think that's where we're going to see a lot of innovation moving forward, is having companies align all the different departments that are pulling in different directions. And as you say, have a single North Star. But last question for you. Knowing that the tasks of a packaging department are going to change, have been changing all along, do you think most packaging professionals are ready for this? And if not, how do they get ready?
I think that they're ready in terms of having the common sense, skills, and experience to actually do what needs to get done. I think a lot of the time they are stopped from being able to do their jobs by systems outside their control, such as the fact that every department in their company might be going in a different direction. So, they might be getting 11 different requirements for their packaging to just before they get it out the door. And so none of that is a testament to their capabilities. It's just that they have to fight their way through all these random layers of the business just to kind of do their job. So, and I think that will be more uncovered this year. I kind of get the sense that finally, with the state of things like EPR, PPWR, Sunrise coming in and becoming law, people have run out of runway and you can't really hide from it anymore. So I think there's been a lot of ability to kind of skip ahead of some of this regulation in the past, and now there's no more place to kind of run to. So I think that will hopefully both make it easier for the companies to see what's holding them back, what departments or systems or thinking is kind of stopping them, and hopefully clear that up or align that. It doesn't have to be complicated. A lot of the stuff that I focus on in alignment is just asking simple questions, like ask the questions at the beginning of the project rather than finding out the answers halfway through. So just making sure you've got all of the people with all the possible experience you need at the start of the project, rather than getting halfway through and being like, oh, I wish I'd asked that person that question. We could have saved ourselves a lot of time and effort, going down this blind corridor. So I think that I don't think it's a question of them needing to do something to be better prepared or capable. The only area that I would suggest is to focus on interpretation of rules and regulations. So what I mean by that is both so what and so what does it mean for me? So what, like who cares about this regulation? Why do I care about this regulation? Do I care about this regulation? If I do, what am I going to need to do to make sure that I'm compliant to it? And if you can answer those questions, then you're going to be well ahead of everybody because you'll be able to do your job. If you can't answer those questions, then you might have a problem because it's going to be something that is going to just be more and more pressure coming down on top of you. And the longer you're unable to answer those questions, the it's just going to be a pretty awkward situation to be in. But I don't think that there's anything that they can do besides just focusing on filtering what it means for me. And I think if they can do that, that will be given the best chance this year of making sure that they are able to pick up and lead their departments or their teams through the sort of sustainability renaissance that we're going to be seeing this year with it hitting a lot more accountability.
I like that, Matthew. And as we go forward here, it'll be interesting to see how these same teams are innovative as they go along with this instead of just doing the basics, because the basics everybody will do, you still have to differentiate yourself. So it's this added task of, oh yeah, and be innovative as well, that I think is really going to separate the winners from the losers.
Yeah, we used to talk about if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you've always got. And I think that's been historically the issue has been there's been a sense of defending a position, which is something that is just a set of degrees of kind of constriction. So you're not growing if you're in that position. If you're just defending, it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And I think this is the year that a lot of people are going to realize that actually, with that innovation, with that kind of simplicity, with that understanding how to really take advantage of the regulation and kind of use it to kind of grow, there'll be a lot more growth in the industry, I think, this year, because people will stop kind of defending and start building out a bit.
I love that, Matthew. Take advantage of the regulation. Ah, it could be as simple as that, and yet executing on that, I think, is where the innovation truly is going to be. Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate me letting you pick your brain.
Very welcome.